Good morning, everyone. Sorry about starting a little conversation in the chat before we even got our real broadcast going. But okay, those who don't know, this is RPG with DBJ. Third Pillar Thursday. This entire week we've been talking about one subject, except for yesterday. The subject is war, and Third Pillar Thursday is one of my favorite, one of my passions. But today's a special day. It is the D20th. Yet again, we release another adventure key where you get to unlock your imagination. Anyway, there are 3 or 4 page adventures for $1 on Drive-Thru RPG. Our first one is pay what you want. It's basically free, so you can check it out, see what if it's the kind of thing you'd like. There are like adventures where each portion of it is modular, randomized, from the enemies to the locations to the NPCs. To details about what happens in a location, so they can be used over and over again. Anyway, sorry about the commercial up front, but yeah, it is the D20th, so just wanted to let you guys know. Every D6 and D20th, we release something. Why? Because it's a critical hit. Anyway, back to war. In the chat, I started a little bit of a conversation about the use of cartoons in propaganda to get keep the war effort going on. And of course, I brought up Bugs Bunny doing the U.S. Marine Corps song "Halls of Montezuma," and then the obvious one was G.I. Joe, which I completely missed, which was another thing, used as a cartoon, a product. A bit of propaganda to get people into the war effort. But anyway, from Monday and Tuesday, we talked about a lot of things, the psychological issues, and a lot of the not problems, but the things that happen before, during, and after war. Whether it's the destruction, whether there are missions and all those kind of things. But we're going to talk about how to craft a war around your player characters. And one of those things that we did bring up on Monday and Tuesday is the chaos of it, the randomization of it, the absolute wild, uncontrolled, unfettered destructiveness of war in and around the player characters, and how can we use that in a game. So one thing we could really do is, for those of us who have an addiction to random tables and picking or rolling on random tables, this is really going to help you guys out, because now's the opportunity to come up with a large number of random things that could happen in and on or around your battlefield, or maybe even specific locations in your battles, and have them affect the player characters, whether it's wild horses running because the riders were killed, whether it's a burning siege machine rolling towards the player characters, arrows flying overhead, heavy launch materials from trebuchets or catapults that are flying through the air and about to hit the player characters, the masses of allies and enemies that are clustered together so hard that they might interrupt and distract or bump into or knock down or even trample the player characters, all those kind of things. Even a phalanx of enemy that have their tower shields up, and behind them they have people with long pikes, and how do you get around that? So all those things we can use, and we can even come up with some mechanics or anything to use in those situations. Basically, not just reskinning, but rethinking the idea of using saving throws, skill checks, ability checks, even modifying attack rolls within the battlefield, so that your player characters have some sort of advantages or disadvantages based on what goes on around them. War face, bunny. Yeah, so was it. Show me your war face. And so I pull out a gun and a soldier, and of course Prue has to pull out the bunny. Oh, yeah. But the excuse me. Also, depending on what time frame you have your war, you can also have the actual environment affected by what's going on. Yeah, yeah. Tables? Did somebody say tables? Yeah, yeah. Fat Ninja DM. Yeah, we love ourselves some tables. And oh, Tesla Rangers war face. I can't see it. I can't tell what it is. Damn it. So, depending on the war time period, the environment itself could be affected, whether it's pockmarked from having dumped, tens of thousands of explosive rounds, just making giant craters all over the place, whether those same craters are filled with like an oily residue from whether oil's been dumped on a battlefield, fires have burned out the woods. Excuse me. Wow. Whether it's barbed wire or just specifically created debris to slow people down. So there could be why is my brain not working? Battlements, fortifications, such as the raw fortifications you found, such as in the movie Braveheart, where you hack down a whole bunch of trees. You sharpen the ends of the tree limbs. You stick one end into the ground. You stick the other end at an angle pointing outwards, so that horses or cavalry cannot approach you because they'll just impale themselves. So you have to jump off your horse or get off your horse and climb over the battlements, all the way up to stacking stones or sand, or just behind giant, 20-foot, 30-foot, 80-foot walls from a castle keep or behind a moat. All those things are hazards, things you could put in the battlefield. There could be a trench filled with oil that can be lit on fire, that can split the party or become a barrier, like a wall of fire between the enemy and the allies. All those things that you can use. Foolish Kiwi even says also the sneakier one of disease that can spread on the battlefield. I believe World War One, it was trench foot was one that I think it was caused because of rainfall mixed with so many explosives made it like kind of acidic, and disease would spread just because of malnutrition. Terrible, nutritional foods would be very hard to get to the war front. That's pretty nasty too, especially all the dead bodies would be around. And you got the carrion. I talked about carrion birds and maggots, or even in D&D rot grubs, even scavenger animals, rats, things like that would be going on. It's pretty nasty. Vincent says Terry Pratchett, when 5 super OP old soldiers have to fight 10,000 soldiers, he says, but after the first 5,000, we will be tired and they are still fresh. No, they have to do mountain climbing. And it's even just killing the killing of thousands of people itself makes its own hazard of like piles of bodies and having to scramble over top of them. There may be some that are still alive, desperately grabbing at anyone or anything to help save them. There could be others that are dead, but they don't know it yet, whether their bodies are hacked in half, their internal organs or limbs, hanging on by a thread as they try to crawl across the battlefield. Those that are blinded or deafened or impaled and still alive, that are wandering around, that might need help or begging for forgiveness or those kind of things. Doctrine Enforcer. Ooh. Here we go. I think we've got a bot or something like that in the chat. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know if that's a person. It might just be a bot. It might just be one of the. I've got one of those before. Yeah, but it sure is having some fun with itself. Foolish Kiwi says, yeah, it's not. Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I could let me see if I can. Let's see, do this. Let's see if this will work. Not sure if it'll work, but there we go. Block. Perfect. Okay. Wasn't sure. Sometimes I've known some. I ended up getting a bot one time that kept changing its name and the permutations of its name and just got popped out of there. Yeah, it's not. And even if even if we were talking about religion, that's not. Our point is we're talking about RPGs and all those kind of things. So thanks, guys. Yeah. Prue says trenches and rain are wonderful for spreading everything, including dysentery. And boy, is dysentery fun. It says actually I've tried it. 0 out of 10. Would not recommend. Yeah, pretty nasty. Dysentery. The clinical clean version of having a like explosive diarrhea or deadly diarrhea, actually, in many ways. Pretty nasty, and you know it is. It's not very heroic to have to go through something like that, even though it is the kind of thing that like, oh, it's pretty nasty. And even disease, using disease in a war type effort could really be something that you could add to the players to ramp up the tension, right? Because the thing is, we want to include elements that become challenges. And if the challenge is to fight, yeah, war. What is it good for? Tesla Ranger says, Squire, clean my armor. Yes, sir. A sponge and a hose. Or you know what? Leave the guy in the armor and just take a hose and just shove it down the helmet and just like spray it till everything like washes out the bottom end till it runs clear. You know, just that's what you do. Yeah, don't take it off, or maybe just open up the back hatch and scrub away from that end. I don't know. But sorry, scatological humor again. But the idea of maybe the PCs have to find something to cure themselves or others, like a remedy of sorts, like trying to find a cure for the dysentery, cure for the trench foot, cure for the cold or flu or any of these other far more lethal diseases that are spreading across the battlefield, affecting maybe even both sides, and trying to find resources so that they can continue the war because they're not as effective. They maybe little by little they start suffering levels of exhaustion or some other weaknesses, losses of strength or dexterity or whatever, a point a day until they can find something, and that can take them away from the war, which, of course, once again, you throw all that stuff in the PC's hands. Do they leave the war to go find something to help their allies in the war effort, or do they stay because the PCs are far more effective than their allies to get them out? Do they make a retreat? All those kind of things. Do you entrench yourself and stay, hoping that you can find help, or send the NPCs away that's going to take them 3 to 5 days and you stay entrenched? Who knows? That tension ramping things. Is actually freaking amoebas in your system. Every time you eat or drink, you feed them. For dysentery, tapeworms, another nasty one that you can get. Yeah, gotta dump buckets on them to get them clean. Foolish Kiwi says. Yeah, better hope it's stainless steel armor though, because getting it wet and everything, that's pretty nasty. Dead Man Storyteller says the Dragonlance novels covered this fairly well. I don't remember that. It's been so long. I'm not disputing it. I'm just saying I don't remember it. But Dragonlance, definitely check that out. The Dragonlance, a classic series. classic series. For Dungeons and Dragons, well before the Forgotten Realm stuff came about. Anyway, so one of the things we can add in is the idea of chaos. I wonder if I can. I don't know if I'll get in trouble for this. I wonder if I can pull up the Battle of the Bastards and maybe we can. Maybe you know what, I'm going to try to do that. I usually don't like to bring in these kind of things, but there's a possibility I can do an overlay, a little share. Battle of the Bastards. Which one is it? Come on. I don't want to take too much time away from you guys. Let's try this one. How long is? Oh, that's 10 minutes long. Jeez. No. There it is. There. That's what we want. All right. So let's see if we can explode this out. Pop this open. Let's pause it. Oh, boom. All right. So, gotta exit out of here. All right, guys, I'm back. sorry, distracted myself trying to pull it up to see if I can share it with you guys. Just to bring up parasites. Ooh. Oh, parasites, damn. You guys are, come on now. We're supposed to be heroes, man. We want the PCs to be like glorious, riding on horseback with the music behind us and banners flying and riding roughshod over top of the enemy. You guys are like into the eating crackers, covered in mud and all those kind of things. Wow, man, you guys are depressing. But one major almost paladins and clerics. Oh my, yes, guys, come on. Is it proves I don't remember either. I haven't read them since puberty, but I sometimes wonder if they're worth rereading. I don't know. I haven't really heard anybody of the younger generation reading the Dragonlance series, so I'm not sure. What is more glorious than surviving the darkest of dangers before riding in on your steed? Yeah, especially if you're suffering from dysentery, of course. They Tesla Ranger says they made an animated version of the first book. I didn't know that. You see, I don't know all these things. I'm gonna have to look all this stuff up. Yeah, thanks, Foolish Kiwi. Oh, Christy Rand, what's going on out in Hawaii? All right. Anyway, back to war. So, during the Battle of the Bastards, it brought across a huge number of. Let's see if we can. Look, it's parasites and poop where you get mimics, DJ. You know that. Yeah, we don't want anal mimics running around eating our refuse from the dysentery. That's but that's us. That's what we do here on RPG with DBJ. That's kind of the subject. But no. But in all seriousness, though, third pillar stuff. It's all about like confronting all the environmental things, and disease really is a major part of that, right? Just being in war, and also allows those clerics and those paladins and those healers, those druids, and even bards to kind of step in and be part of the spotlight, because your more warrior types tend to shine and in times of war. So this is just an ability to for you to navigate things and have them have a huge impact on whatever kind of battle you intend to incorporate with your player characters and stuff. Christy, you're in Germany now. Oh, you're Vince is there. You're right around the corner, because that's how we always think when two or more people are in the same country, that they're like right next door to each other. Dead Man says Dragonlance pretty much ended with the 3.5 version back in the aughts. Yeah, that's why I was reading that before I got all these grays. Christy says whom is fighting and why, and Poo says anal mimics are now a thing, folks. Stat it out. Stat it out. You're pretty nasty. But yeah, in war, yeah, we in Monday, Tuesday, Christy, we talked about like who are you fighting, why are you fighting, the motivations to fight, using propaganda to continue fights, the battle, sometimes the economics of warfare as well, whether it's benefits one or more factions to continue fighting, putting the economy on a putting the economy in a war footing, so that you start producing more materials. And unfortunately, the sad reality is, war and fighting and battle actually begins to improve not just the economy, but the developmental processes of different things. The United States highway system wouldn't exist if it wasn't for World War II and the fact that we copied the German highway system that was used to not only take heavy materials from one place to another, but to have straightaways so you had a place to land planes, cargo planes, and hide those areas in the open. So yeah, there's a lot of developmental processes. I think today there is a powder that is used when people are shot. They have basically have a huge impalement and they start bleeding out. And I believe someone developed a powder that you can dump into a wound to staunch the wound temporarily before they get help. I think that's used in the medical field. Fat Ninja DM says the movie's called Dragonlance: Dragons of Autumn Twilight. Damn, guys! Wow. Okay, I'll remember that. Dragons of Autumn Twilight. I did not know that. Because you answers theological differences. One side just doesn't get it. Yeah, there's even one side fighting another within the allies. Their reasons for fighting can be anything from I just wanted a job to duty for family. Like we've had 5 generations of warriors and I'm just going to go along, all the way to there's a perfect excuse for me to kill people and I can't do that in public society. Like individual motivations versus group motivations versus national motivations all can shift and change and warp through time. And sometimes those motivations don't last too long if a war goes on for a long time. Like, hey, this was fun the first month, it's been 5 years, I'm done. But yeah, there's some new type of vermin in the supplies. Scott Poe says brought over by the invading enemy's ships gives a good side problem. Yeah, invasive flora and fauna is a real problem when you have travel, and that can be a really big problem if you have like an invasive insect or bacteria or disease or some kind of thing that starts like getting into the food supply, right? It just starts rotting it from the inside, or maybe there's some kind of like you said, vermin or rats or something like that. That's just like weasels or something that are just getting into the food. Maybe it's a carrion eater and it starts eating at dead bodies as well, almost like ghoulish dogs or rats or something like that. What are those goblin dogs that might be real popular? Or maybe something becomes in order for an animal species to survive, it starts to adapt itself to all the killing and murder. And so maybe like wolves or rats or bats or something start eating dead flesh, and the ones that some die off, but there are others that have adapted to it, so they become a problem, and maybe that problem becomes even bigger amongst everyone else. Yeah, it's pretty nasty. Christy Rand says prevents infection. Sulfa powder, is that hemostatic powder it's called. I didn't know the name of it, guys, but yes, there is that it's a temporary relief that someone designed because of so many war injuries, and those things come about those developments come about because of war, right? Just for example, artificial limb technology has improved leaps and bounds because of so many soldiers coming back from war that have been missing limbs due to the IED proliferation. War is rarely first level. One-on-one, I'm sorry. Neighboring provinces will usually have a pretty strong opinion toward one side or the other. Again, a slight little side note. I think in World War I, there was the idea of troops traveling through ally and enemy territory, and it's just like, listen, I understand you want to fight your enemy, but don't come across my property, right? You have a beef with someone else, and now your war is happening on my territory or in my fields where I feed my people. Something's got to be done about it. And you're right, war is rarely one-on-one. It involves it's the if you're not for me, against me mentality as well. It's a test of the power of allies and enemies, bringing your allies into a war that your allies are like, listen, you started this thing, I don't want to be part of it. And it forces them politically. Do they break the political treaties they have as allies and not join in, or do they join in and are forced to fund something or get emotionally involved in or politically involved in or even honor bound to be involved in something that they never wanted to be involved in the first place. One of the armies having something like a sulfur powder would make such a huge difference. I think even in a medieval setting, the use of healing magic and those kind of things, I think, would have a tremendous effect on continuing a war well beyond its hey, we're only going to fight for a few days and we're done. Second, Christy Ranson, Second World War sharks learned explosions were dinner bells. Yeah. Once those ships went down and those explosives went off, people start dumping in the water. It was time to eat. There are many predatory animals that learned. Like I talked about the carrion birds. Once the battlefield stops, they're just like, ooh, great eating. It's a whole bunch of bodies and nobody doing anything about it. Too many people to bury. Got to keep on marching on and leave them behind, stuck in the barbed wire. Those kind of things. Soldiers in a big army starting to faction out and infight if they are not kept busy. Camp followers of all types have their own interests at heart. And sure, you even have black marketeers crossing military lines to sell supplies to one side or the other. You have war profiteers who know that whether there's clean uniforms, clean and nutritional food and water, those kind of things, they know that both sides need those things. You can even have a third faction or even a government knowing that two sides are fighting and begin building implements of war to sell to one side or the other, and then selling the counter to that item to the other side and doing it back and forth. So you might have you could have one side is armed with explosives, another side you're arming them with tanks that or some kind of defense against the explosions, and then you arm the other side with bigger armor piercing rounds because you just given one side the thing that nullifies the other side, and so war profiteering would be is a huge thing. And of course there's people who are like, I don't have a loyalty to either side, I just want to make some money, I just want I know what I'm doing is going to, increase my coffers. So mutiny would be interesting. There's plenty of that. Lots of people, lots of those in the States went to Canada so they wouldn't get drafted into the army. And there are plenty of people that just like, hell, I'm out of here. I'm going to Mexico. I'm going to Canada. I am not getting drafted into a war that I don't want to be part of. And those are interesting things, right? Could PCs be out to bring those individuals back? Maybe the PCs are the mutineers themselves, whether they're on a ship, whether they want to they want to leave the war effort. Maybe the PCs were convinced that whatever this war effort was just and noble cause, and you find out that it isn't, and they're asked or tasked to do things they don't want to do. It could be that the PCs think this is a noble and just effort, but the methods to convince others to go through it are harsh, such as the gangs that the government sends out to grab up the 12-year-olds and older able-bodied individuals and take them to the front lines and throw some armor and a shield and a ill-fitting helmet and a rusty sword into their hand. And it could be that they're sending out these press gangs to force them to join the Navy, join the Army, to put them on the front lines. And, people don't like that. You coming in, taking their kids, and they're trying to hide their kids under the floorboards, and they're telling their families to, the able-bodied members of, the farming community to run for their lives because press gangs are forcing them into a war of attrition. That's pretty nasty. What is the third pillar, and how do I get it? Let's see. I think I'm thinking you're being a little sarcastic, but okay. Third pillar is the first and second pillar is, let me start over again. The pillars of role playing are combat, social interaction, and the environment. And so combat and social interactions make two of the pillars, but in order to hold up the gaming, you need a third pillar, and that's the environment. And that's kind of my thing, is using the environment as a dynamic setting when you have war. For example, I didn't bring up weather. Weather is a great equalizer when it comes to war, whether it's snow, frigid cold, drought, extreme heat, hurricanes, rain, fog, ice, snow, rain, thunderstorms, all those things that happen in regular time. Just imagine having the environment, whether it comes to the topographical, whether you have to go up and down hillsides through thick woods, whether it's crossing a desert, whether it's crossing a raging river or climbing up a cliffside, or any of those things are places that you can have your conflicts, you can have your combat, and even some of your social interactions, and then having a war happen on those areas and in and around those areas, and having those elements affect what's going on. For example, if you have if you're trying to push your troops across a raging river, and that raging river is strong enough to carry people away, and maybe you need to, maybe one side has to grab on ropes and use guidelines to get across this raging river because they're going to get swept away, whereas the other side might have is up on a hill and they're busy, shooting arrows and throwing, javelins, or maybe this is more modern and they're using heavy weapons. How do you navigate going across this raging river? How fast do you go? What happens if people get swept away? Do they grab onto something? Do they drown? Are they sitting ducks? All those kind of things. Exploration and environment. It's all that. It's layers, traps, puzzles, obstacles, hazards, challenges, all those things. Psychological warfare absolutely is part of that as well, in terms of how often can you see people screaming and yelling in pain, begging for mercy, begging for their families, begging for the gods to take them away, screaming, holy hell, by the hundreds or thousands, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm sure in a medieval setting, there's only so many people a cleric can heal until they're just screaming up at the gods, as they try to heal each person one by one. And then when they look around, they see hundreds, even thousands of individuals that are begging for their help and begging for the gods. And with you being the symbol of that godling, it's like you represent both the helping hand and the pain they have to go through. I even talked about the person who suffers psychological trauma for being constantly healed and thrown back into battle again, and having their entrails pulled out and then being healed and going back into battle again, and then having their leg cut off and then being healed and going back into battle again. I mean, that's pretty nasty. But even there are plenty of wars in which the weather has crushed a major side, whether it's freezing temperatures and the people not being prepared for it, whether it's going into deep jungles and one side being unprepared for what happens in the jungles. The United States, military didn't understand how unprepared they were when they went to Vietnam, and the locals knew the jungles. They knew how to survive. They were aware of the thick jungles and rainforests. They had deep tunnels in the mountainside that the Americans didn't know about or were unprepared to deal with, and things. They weren't prepared for guerrilla tactics, striking and running a little bit at a time, and then having people caught in traps and pit traps with spikes at the bottom, and being caught in razor wire and all those things in the deep jungle. We weren't prepared for it. So guess what? The environment, despite having a quote unquote superior war force, the environment is a great equalizer, man. It's a nasty thing. Tedman says clerics have had access to mass healing spells at high levels. And that would be based on the level of how many healing clerics there are in the military, right? So do you have 30 18th level clerics, or is there just one or two, and all the other ones are like the little peons and they're first and second and fifth level, and they're not able to keep up with that? Also, if you take let's say we take Dungeons and Dragons as how things work, how often are they able to use those mass healing spells? If they're only let's say they only have 3 in their repertoire before they pray for more, how many people have to die before they're able to regain those spells, as in terms of thinking of Dungeons and Dragons as the reality of how those things work, right? It's 30 clerics. Infant is like, whoa, what I walk into? We're talking about war. This whole week we were talking about war. Well, except Wednesday, I did have an interview yesterday. But that being said, we're talking about war, and just talk about the dichotomy, the ups and downs of like healing people and the death and destruction and magic on the battlefield. And also we have to remember that spells and magic are used by people who have their own agendas, whether they are completely loyal to this war effort, whether they become disillusioned, whether they become psychologically affected by what they see. Do they double down? Is the cleric like doubling down, like, I'll never let my people suffer? Or does someone start losing faith, no matter how powerful they are, that there's still things that they cannot do, and that they're begging the gods to help their side out? And what happens if you have clerics from both sides that are worshiping the same godling? Like, we always have this tendency to be to think that the gods are on our side when it comes to those kind of things. But yeah, Scott Post says teleporting illusionists could create all sorts of havoc, keeping soldiers awake with sounds, creating fleeing images of hidden dangers, making visual illusions of resources their army doesn't have. Now, you're being quite, dude. That's insidious, because it's not making major effects, but these minor little things that have these compound effects. In other words, instead of having, we love to think of the 20th level characters having this big effect on the battle, but imagine like 5 minor illusionists might be more powerful than 1 major illusionist, simply because those minor illusions feed on themselves, right? We tend to fill in the gaps when we see things that don't fit right. So having little hidden dangers or sounds that keep people awake, our own imagination start fueling those things, and having resources that aren't there. Hey, look, we got a whole new shipment of food, and then turn around and it's not really there. Then people start blaming each other. Maybe someone thinks that it was stolen. One side blames another faction in the same army that they stole it. Those kind of things are insidious. So yeah, absolutely. Uh, Fat Ninja DM says, I stepped away for a minute, but you have brought this up. The PCs in the previous war fought for one kingdom and formed a band of brothers, and now they're fighting for the opposing side now. And that's a thing too. Political maneuverings at home can change the battlefield itself. Your enemies might be friends now, or vice versa. There might be treaties that are split. Maybe a group of people work together from different nations or different factions, and now they're being told they have to split apart. Or it might be, it might be enemies of the state. Wizards on the battlefield can essentially double as elemental artillery. It's both menacing and beautiful. Yeah, who says that you have to use mundane artillery as it would be? Instead of like catapults throwing like rocks or even flaming pitch, who's to say that blasts of frost or lightning or necrotic energy doesn't come lancing off of castle walls down into the battlefield? And all you really need to do with that is just change the damage source, right? Instead of bludgeoning damage, it's psychic damage or necrotic damage or thunder damage or something. And that could really alter the mystical, nearly the elemental nature, the high fantasy of your chaotic battle setting, without really having to change like numeric values or something like that. Well, wouldn't a God of War have the last say per se? That's if they show up. Yeah. Antimatter grenades. That man says antimatter grenades. Ooh, nasty. Or implosion grenades that suck everything into like a almost like black hole, where it sucks everything into like a 500 feet, gets sucked into a black pearl that just falls into the ground because it's probably just as heavy. You could come up with it if you do far future war. That would absolutely be possible with antimatter grenades, nuclear weapons, X-ray lasers, gamma ray beams, microwave blasters, particle beams, all those kind of things. Alex C says no one really wants to fight when demoralized. And see, that's one of the things that I feel like could also be used as an overlay as well, is the psychological harm. Any Cthulhu game has insanity in it, but I also feel like, this is a plug, in our survival book and in our and coming up in other books as well. We put in survival, and in the aquatic book, we talk about despair, which is basically, it's psychological exhaustion, not just physical exhaustion. Foolish Kiwi says bag of holding inside of a bag of holding grenades. Or there's a meme / pic of a rolled up portable hole, a couple of inches away from a bag of holding, and you launch it off of an arrow or a ballista, and then when it impacts, the portable hole goes into the bag of holding and then creates this dead space or something. It's silly, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's pretty nasty. Now let's see if I wish I could. Is there a way to do this and share it at the same time? There has to be a way to bring it up. Yeah, definitely use morale checks. They were a staple of the OG. Yeah, morale checks are a big thing. You could do wisdom checks or wisdom saves. You could do what am I trying to say? You can have the effects start to compound. So maybe you do it on an hourly, daily, weekly basis, that the PCs start acquiring these things. Like maybe you roll a D6 and those are like points. And then you roll another d6 and you get these points. And the minute it surpasses their wisdom or intelligence or something, they suffer some kind of like minor, maybe some kind of a minor insanity or something. And if they ignore it or they don't do something during their maybe short or long rests, or do something to, whether they pray to their gods or whatever the case might be, maybe it turns from short-term madness to long-term madness. You could come up with all kinds of things, but morale. I don't know why I guess I know why they took out morale rolls, just to make it streamlined and easier. But that's a major staple of using NPCs, adversaries, enemies, and even for the PCs themselves. Third pillar, Thursday is about the environment, right? So war and the effects that the environment has on large-scale tactics is something we should be chatting about. No, absolutely. We did a little bit. We get a little distracted, but I just love the idea of having a battlefield which keeps changing, and the PCs don't have control over it. Whether there's giant the elephants, the war animals, the mounts that are like charging through where the PCs are at, and they have to find cover or duck or be knocked down and trampled, or whether once again the enemy starts launching thousands of arrows overhead, and the PCs have to find cover or duck behind someone, or even jump inside of the dead bodies to prevent being impaled, making their saving throws against that. The random catapult attacks, as was mentioned before, maybe there are wizards in the towers that are launching blasts and spells and things at the PCs randomly, and they're shooting them down there. Lack of sleep, lack of food, lack of gear can affect a lot of things. Now you're fine, Alex C. All those things can affect the environment. Of course, dropping your weapons, having your weapons crushed and losing them, fighting in bitter cold or 3 feet of snow, in torrential rain, being in thick fog and not knowing where your enemy is at, climbing up or down a muddy hill, having traps prepared by the enemy, whether it's pit traps with spikes in them, all, not just one or two, but hundreds of them, whether it's they've created a dead man's space where the enemy is hidden, but they're able to launch attacks at the PCs the minute they poke their head up. Tactics, catapults enchanted with darkness spells, where they launch these things, and then they're wherever the object lands, of course, crushing whoever it is also creates this globe of darkness around it, so no one can see. It's all kinds of things. How huge winds or hurricane forces could be involved in a battle. As mentioned before, elementals. And here's where you can, as the DM, you can reskin a lot of these things. So you can reskin the things where instead of there being quote unquote summoning elementals, maybe it's just a raging fire, and that's gotten out of control. Instead of someone summoning an air elemental, maybe they're fighting in a storm. You don't need to. While we love using magic as the default reason for why things are happening, we don't necessarily have to do that. We can just reskin what we already have. The pit traps, the collapsing ceilings, those kind of things, the bear traps or something, could be on a battlefield and either be actual physical, the physical things that you're thinking of. So, for example, the king has set up hundreds of literally snapping bear traps all across the field in front of his castle, and the PCs have to navigate around them. Or they could be, it could just simply be such a rugged terrain that you can get your ankle caught down in the rocky material and break your ankle, or your mount could break their ankle and get it stuck and trapped or whatnot. Dead Man says muddy fields with lots of spike-filled pit traps, which is true. What the enemy, whatever the enemy of the PCs are going to be, they're going to confront people that are going to be prepared for those things. And if you have hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of workers, they're going to prepare a battlefield to fight people. So the classic moat is a perfect example of defending your territory. And if the PCs have to cross the moat to climb up the castle wall to get inside, to get the drawbridge down. That's a great obstacle for the PCs to have to go across. You've got to go across the muddy water in the moat, and you might drown in your plate mail armor. Then you have to climb up the wall, and of course, this entire time you're sitting duck for all the attacks that are happening against you. Maybe there's a time limit on climbing up those ladders that you have to climb over the castle wall, and if you don't get up the ladder enough, they're going to just use sticks and push the ladders off, and you fall at the top edge of the ladder onto your own troops. I mean, that's tension creating, right? That's great. Alex C says, why waste time on a spell when the mundane is already there? Exactly. Even and that's kind of my thing, right? You can have spellcasters and they're powerful. They're absolutely powerful. They're great things to put on a battlefield. They're going to have a great effect, but the mundane already exists. And to use that, why not have a battle where there's such torrential rain that everything's getting blown 30 feet to the south from the wind, whether it's your arrows that you're trying to shoot that are useless, whether the enemy's trying to launch javelins off the castle walls and it's useless, whether you're trying to fly through the air but you're getting blown 30 feet laterally every time you're flying through the air, whether you have to make saves when you start to stand because you're going to get knocked down, whether the wind is blowing out fires, you're trying to cast a fireball and it gets blown out by the wind, or the damage gets mitigated already. Infinite says enemy has a giant throwing bear traps on chains like bolos hundreds of feet away at you. That's pretty nasty, man. Just tossing out bear traps, having it snap on somebody's neck, and then you just pull the chain right on back in. Yeah, giant living catapults. Even enemies that send out ravaging hordes of some kind of like mindless creature or something, using catapults to launch oozes onto the enemy. There is someone, I know you guys know this because I'm too stupid to realize this. There is a Bollywood movie of a battlefield, and I know you guys know what I'm talking about. There are clips all over the place, and I do not know the name of this movie. I'll give you an example. At one point in this Bollywood movie, they launch like this 100-foot by 100-foot tapestry attached to 2 spears. And then when it flies over top of the enemy, they launch flaming arrows and they light the entire tapestry on fire, and it falls down on the enemy, literally igniting everyone on fire. There's another one where they launch these iron, like they look like 20-sided dice, these balls at the enemy, and then when the balls land, you come to find out that they shatter into the allied troops because they all had their shields held so tight together they made a ball, and then when it lands, they just became people running around on the battlefield. I can't. It's please, Prue, tell me that's the name of the movie. Bahubal. Is that, I can't, I'm butchering the name of it, but it's a great, I've never seen the movie, but it's awesome. There's 2 of them and they're glorious. That's it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh man. Bear traps, man. Bahubali is indeed the movie. Bahubali. There we go. Okay. Unprofessional of me. I've got to that and Dragonlance. All right. Yeah, oh my God, that movie's great, and that's taking that's combining like the super cinematic with the with the mundane. Yeah, man, that's great. I'm gonna see if I can actually do something here. I'm gonna try to Bruce says, sorry, Switcher Double A's just watched them both with a friend. Yeah, don't apologize for that. You're perfectly fine. And it's on Netflix, and there's 3 of them. There's 3. Damn. Okay. All right. I think I'm gonna have to. I think I'm gonna have to get to be part of this. Let's see. Let's unmute this. Let's see if we can get part of this started. I'm not I hope you guys can hear me. There we go. Yeah, I just wanted to share a little something to send us out on one of the greatest, most impressive cinematic battles that we've ever seen. Unfortunately, I really don't have access to see the chat at the moment, but man, this is one of the most epic battles I think we've ever seen, and this is a perfect prime example of what I'm talking about. Third pillar. Get up, man. Get up. Uh-oh. Yep. Time to shit the pants. And yeah, what a great scene. That's just sweet. Yeah, I know your sword's magic, but there's not much you can do about it, right, dude? Yeah. Go ahead, Snow. On Jon Snow. Draw my Valyrian steel and fight the enemy. And let's see. What's gonna happen? Motherfucker. Yeah. Yeah, Ramsey, you're an ass. Yeah, what the hell, dude? You bastard. Oh, you're a bastard. No. And of course, we're going to kill our own guys. Yep. Yeah, I'm an 8th level fighter. I don't know what the hell to do. I've got a magic sword and it's completely useless now. Yeah, you almost got hit there, buddy. Glad you made your save. Oh, thanks for the help. Oh, shit. Oh, whoa. Thanks for being a hit point sponge. Yeah, pretty nasty. Pretty nasty. Yeah, I'm with you, Prue. They love maiming those horses. It's pretty nasty. Scott posts, damn, that guy took the right feats. He got that right. Infinite says, come on, in D&D and other games, that's a Tuesday. Oh, good. I'm glad you guys can hear me on that. The Battle at Helm's Deep is a great one. Dude, even the Battle of um, why did my mind go? Return of the King. That's a great battle as well. Not as bloody as this one, but extremely nasty. Just guys, just let me know if I need to turn this down or up. Yeah. 300s. Oh my god. I can turn on 300 all the time. I'm freaking distracted by that movie. It's sweet. Oh, dead. There we go with the dead bodies I was talking about. You got to make your climbing checks to climb up on top of them. Oh man. Alex C says, would mounted warriors have advantage on attack rolls and every 10 feet of momentum that would deal initial d6 damage with your weapon? I would I don't know if I would. I think that might be too much an advantage. Yeah, Kiwi says we can hear you, but not the video. Desktop audio is its own setting. Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that. Because it's blasting in my ears a little bit, and I wasn't sure if they're able to if I could, I don't know if I have the ability to share that with you guys. Yeah, I don't know if I would add a D6 for every D10. Um, I would. I think you could substitute the mount's strength for the attack bonus. I think that would be probable. You know, the horse. Ooh, dude, whatever, man. Leave the horses alone. Anyway, the horse's strength of maybe, I don't know what it is, like 30 or 40 or whatever the hell it is in the game, as if it was wielding a weapon, I think would be appropriate. Although maybe mathematically it still figures out to be the same thing. Not really certain. That means I got to turn it down in my ears. The hell. That sounds a little bit better. All right. What 300 is a perfect example of a battle. The Lord of Fire, Lord of Jeez. The Return of the King, great movie. There's a Seventh Samurai movie. It's a little older, and of course, dated is black and white. That's got an awesome battle in it. 300, actually, both 300 movies. I know that the second 300 movie wasn't as good, but as far as battles, I think it was really great. Although riding a horse across sailing ships is a little bit like, whoa, it's a little Bollywood-ish, but it's awesome. Yeah, you made your climbing check and then you died. And let's walk down our friends and allies, because they're easy to whatever. Although if you drop a weapon, you can easily find another one. Yeah, this giant should have been far more effective in this battle, I think. Give him a big tree. Shogun has quite a few battles. So yeah, there's plenty of things you can do, and especially if it's choreographed well, that the environment that they're in, whether you want to make like randomized tables as to what's going on around them, whether they have reduced movement, maybe longer weapons end up becoming useless, or like in this particular scene where you have the pikemen and their pikes, if you're unable to get past the pikes, you're not able to move past the other side of it. By the way, anyone who hasn't seen All Silent on the Western Front, do yourselves a favor. There's a scene, or hasn't read All Silent on the Western Front, do yourselves a favor. There's a scene with a cannon horse and otherwise very stoic soldiers. I have not read it. There's a movie. I know it's kind of a kid's movie. A War Horse. That is another one that kind of flash back to the World War I incidents where both sides came out of their trenches. And in War Horse, there's the horse ends up getting tangled in barbed wire in the no man's land, and a soldier from each side ends up coming up, and they use their tools to release the horse so he could run free. Sure, they may have thought it would be a temporary reprieve, but it was like, why are you